So, I want to talk about something that for me used to get misunderstood quite a lot. And I didn't fully realize it at the time, but looking back, it actually explains a lot about how people interpret each other. A couple of years ago, I had someone I was with tell me that they thought I was being manipulative or that I was lying or withholding the truth in some way. And their reasoning was because I would say something one week, and then the next week I would say something completely different about the same topic. Like my stance would totally have changed. My perspective would shift. Sometimes it would even sound like I was contradicting myself because I guess in a way I actually was, depending on what it was, okay? And to them that didn't make sense, which I completely understand. But because in their mind it was like, well, which one is it? Were you lying then? Or are you lying now? And I remember explaining to them, no, it's not that either one of those things is a lie. It's that I got more information. And when you get more information, your understanding changes. It kind of has to. That's kind of just how learning works, how awareness works, how life works. If you're actually paying attention, but I realized something from that interaction that I think is important to talk about because this isn't really about that one situation. This is about the difference between people who see change as deception and people who understand change as growth. Because from the outside, I get how it can look if someone says one thing and then later says something different. It can look like inconsistency and instability and even manipulation if you're already viewing it through that lens. But from the inside, that's not what was happening at all. From the inside, it's more like last week, this is what I knew based on the information that I had. This week, I have more information. So this is what I know now. So, of course, what I'm saying has changed, and that's not me trying to confuse you. That's me updating it in real time. And the easiest way I can explain this is with something really simple. 1 plus 1 equals 2. That's not something that changes. So, if at some point you thought 1 plus 1 was 3, and then you learned that it's actually 2, you don't go back and say it's 3 again just to stay consistent with your past self. You don't do that because now you know. And once you know, you can't unknow. So your answer changes, not because you're lying, but because you're closer to the truth than you were before. And that's the part that gets missed. Some people define integrity as saying the same thing today that they said yesterday. Like consistency is the highest value, but I don't see it that way. To me, integrity is saying what is most true based on what you understand right now, even if that contradicts what you said before. Because if your understanding has changed and your answer hasn't, then you're not being honest, you're just being consistent. Those are not the same thing. I mean, it's great if you can be consistently honest, right? Anyway, and I think that's where you start to see a real divide in how people move through the world. Some people operate from a very fixed framework, like their beliefs don't really change, their perspectives don't really expand. And it's not because they're not intelligent or something like that, but more because their system is closed. Like new information comes in, but it doesn't really land. It kind of gets filtered through what they already believe. So everything kind of stays the same. And then there are people who are more, how would you say, I guess, open, where their mind is actually responsive to what they're experiencing. Something new comes in, and instead of rejecting it or forcing it to fit into what they already think, they let it update them. And when that happens, their perspective evolves naturally. So over time, what they say is going to change because they're changing. Their awareness is expanding, and that's not inconsistency, that's real time integration. And I think another layer of this, and this is something that I didn't fully see back then, is that when someone interprets your ability to change your mind as manipulation, a lot of times what's actually happening is they're uncomfortable with the fact that they can't lock you into a fixed position. Because if your perspective is always evolving, then you're not predictable in the way they expect. And for some people, predictability feels like safety. So when you're not fixed, when you're not easily definable, and not the same version of yourself every single time they interact with you, that can feel threatening. Not because you're doing anything wrong, obviously, but because you're not operating within their framework. And that's where the misinterpretation can happen, because they're reading your movement as instability when really it's responsiveness. They're reading your evolution as inconsistency when really it's just honesty. And I think this is important, especially if you're someone like me who has ever been accused of being confusing or contradictory or manipulative simply because your perspective has changed. Because there's a difference between someone who is intentionally shifting their story to control a scenario, a narrative, or a situation, and someone who is updating their understanding as they go. Those two things might look similar on the surface, but they feel very different. One is disconnected. There's no through line. The other one builds, it deepens, there's a progression to it, like layers. And you can feel that difference if you're paying attention. So for me, I don't see changing my mind as a problem. I see it as a sign that I'm actually engaging with what's in front of me. Because if nothing about how you see the world is changing, then you're not really interacting with it. You're just moving through something you've already decided. And I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be the same person with the same perspective 10 years from now, just repeating the same conclusions over and over again. That doesn't even make sense to me. There's too much information, nuance, depth in life for that to even be possible. So, yeah, if my understanding changes, my answer is going to change. That's not manipulation. That's me telling you the truth in real time. And if that makes me inconsistent in someone else's eyes, I'm okay with that, because I would rather be accurate, honest, truthful than consistent every single time.